morning, everybody. Oh, it's been a crazy past week and weekend, and the news that I get because of my situation and people that I'm in contact with, and the reports and news articles and things that I get. It's been absolutely insane, the levels of illegal crime that's going on in the United States right now. But last night, I'm running for Arizona State Representative here in LD9 in Arizona. And I had several of our precinct committee men and women invite me over to one of their homes. They were having a viewing of a illegal immigration movie. It was called The Invasion, I believe. And so I went over there last night, and it was a great group of people. It was a video that they showed that the John Birch Society had done back in, I believe it was 1986 or 7-ish. And it was very, very interesting to watch because the whole video and the issues they were talking about, they were showing, I didn't even realize that Border Patrol was in place back in the 80s. And I think they only had about 1,600 agents at the time, I believe. I was taking notes and sent myself all the notes in an email last night. So let me pull it up because I've got a lot of the details. It was, like I said, it was very interesting how long this has been going on. The same issues. I mean, they were talking about amnesty because, of course, Reagan did that amnesty. Let me see. Let me go back to last night. I'm having a package delivered, so my dogs are barking. Oh, I'm on the wrong email account. I'm sorry. But Reagan had done amnesty then in the 1980s. So this was an issue. So, okay, they were going back in time and saying this is in 1976, folks. And it's funny because, I remember after Brandon was killed in 2012, that they were saying at that point, oh, we've got about 11 million illegals in the country. And of course, the number really hasn't changed much from 11 million. They might say, oh, yeah, we're at 15, 16 million, 18 million since Biden took office. No, you need to add the, 17 to 20 million, which is what they really believe has been coming over since Biden has been in office. And then you think there's already 6 to 8 million illegals, with 1 to 1.2 million coming over every year after 1976. The figures were just unbelievable, and the discussion they were having, and there was a gentleman, his name was, I wrote it down because I was so impressed with the stuff that he was saying. I didn't put it in this email. It was something Rodriguez. And he was Hispanic, and he lived in Texas. He was down in Brownsville. They were doing this interview down in Brownsville. Like I said, it was in the 1980s. And he made a very profound statement. He said, because this was an issue then, they were having bills that were going through about teaching Spanish to children in school. They had all these bills going through. The Department of Education decided in the 1980s that it was unconstitutional not to allow illegal children in our school system. And all this stuff was going on. But this Hispanic man said, practice your heritage at home, but speak the language of the land in the marketplace. And I thought those are some really profound words, because this is what goes on so much out in society is these people come into our country and they just think that they don't stop to think about assimilation and what's going to happen, how they're not going to understand the laws of the land, how they're not going to understand people on the streets to be able to talk, to be able to get around, to support themselves, to get a job. They don't think this type of thing through. And I think it's because all these NGOs and these charity places, they have discussions. And of course, the United Nations is involved pretty deeply in it. They have these discussions with these people and say, come on over, we'll take care of you. We'll provide you with a place to live. We'll make sure that you're fed and clothed, and we'll make sure that you get jobs. We'll get you work visas. And I'm sure that they're told all of this sort of things, because I'm thinking, why would I pack up my life and trek across and do whatever it took to do to get to Africa? I don't speak the languages in a lot of those countries in Africa. I don't know their culture. And you go into these foreign countries expecting them to take care of you, provide me with a place to live, provide me with food, give me a work permit, make sure that I have a job, give me free medical. If something happens, I want to be able to go to the hospital and leave without having to pay a dime. All of the things, mind you, that American citizens have to worry about. American citizens have to worry about the fact that they have a job, that they're able to pay for a roof over their heads, that they're able to buy groceries for their family to eat, that they have medical insurance, or if they don't, they know when they go to the hospital and come home that they're going to have an astronomical bill sent to them that's going to show up on their credit report. They're going to be hounded constantly by bill collectors to get that medical bill paid. These are all the things that these illegals come into this country and not only expect, but they are handed freely by our elected officials, by the NGOs who are glad to spend the billions of taxpayer dollars that this administration is giving them to provide this for all these illegals. You don't make life easier. This gentleman was also speaking about, what they had to go through, and about credible fear, and how a lot of these people, like a lot of the people, didn't qualify for the amnesty program that was put through in the 80s. And so they had all these NGOs and the ACLU, of course, that was brought up in this video. They were brought up. It was interesting because the ACLU was actually fighting for like 7 Middle Eastern terrorists back in the 80s in court, fighting for their right to not be deported. This video was just insane, because if they hadn't told us that this is from the 80s, I would have thought it was a modern day documentary that was made for us to watch. Of course, the telephone sitting on the desk with the cord on it and everything, and the way they dressed and a lot of things gave it away. But issue-wise, if you weren't able to see that and just listen to it audio, it is absolutely crazy. Because the figure of 6 to 8 million is the figure that they're using now to say this is what's come over during the Biden administration. So in 1987, 1.7 illegals were expelled from the country. So, and as time went on, in 1978, they had a congressional committee that said, we've got 8 million illegals here. And then you had another committee that was formed, and they said, no, there's 12 to 15 million here. And then you had some of these outside statistical kind of organizations saying, no, there's 20 million illegals here. And this was all in 1987 1978, that they're making these statements. In 1989, 9 million illegal immigrants had come in during that last decade, is what they were saying. So it varies from 6 to 20 million of what they were saying. And actually, that would have been two decades, because the inconsistency between 8 million, 12 to 15 million, and 20 million, those were figures that were stated in the 1970s. And oh no, it would have been in the 70s. Yeah, because in 1976, they were saying there was 6 to 8 million illegals, with 1 to 1.2 million more coming in every year. So this was happening back in the 70s. And so here's my point, and this is what I talk to a lot about people. You figure this is 40, 50 years ago, folks. And this is still an issue. We've got elected officials in Congress that are hell-bent on making sure that nothing's ever done about illegal immigration. And even back in the 70s and 80s in this documentary that we were watching, they were talking about how these non-governmental organizations, they didn't call them that then, they just called them charities, but they were talking about these charities that get government money and how they help these people arrive here and go into these foreign countries, have these pamphlets, have all of this stuff that they hand out to these people. And they were demanding back then, I don't even know where I was going with that, what that train of thought, but they were demanding back then that, so these people didn't qualify for the asylum as it was offered by the Reagan administration. And so you had all these charities and these non-governmental organizations, is what we would call them today, and ACLU and all of them fighting for these illegals because they didn't qualify for the amnesty. And so they were finding any other way in order to get these people to be able to stay. And already back in the 80s, they were talking about the fact that the United States was accepting twice the number of illegals than any other country. And this gentleman who was speaking, this Mr. Rodriguez, was saying, I want to make sure that people understand that immigration is a privilege, not a right. And the United States welcomes many, many people. And I thought it was ironic because they showed the Statue of Liberty, and he said, this is a beacon of hope to a lot of people, that we accept you're poor, you're tired, you're battered. And I want to remind people that is a statement on a statue. That is not immigration law in the United States. So a lot of these arguments that people have online, I see it all the time. The Statue of Liberty says, it doesn't matter. The Statue of Liberty was made in France. It was sent to the United States as a gift. And that is not our immigration laws, folks. That is strictly a statement on a statue. A statue, mind you, that these people who want all the other statues to be ripped down, a statue, mind you, that these people look to and quote because it fits their narrative, right? Amazing how that happens. Yeah, and even back in the 80s, they were talking about the Department of Education, the Department of Energy, the Department of Health and Human Services, how overfunded they were, how they really shouldn't be federal government departments, and how INS and Immigration and Naturalization is what that was, and Border Patrol were highly underfunded compared to those three departments. So they had less than 2,500 Border Patrol agents. And in 1988, it was going to increase to 3,600. And of course, we're short now because I think we're approved at over 21,000, almost 22,000. And I think we only have about 19,000 Border Patrol agents. But even back in the 80s, the New York Police Department had 27,000 officers for one city. And we had less than 2,500 Border Patrol agents for all of the border, including the southern border, the ocean border around Florida, because a lot of those people were coming from Cuba and Haiti then, and then the Canadian border. And there were several articles. Oh, they were even talking in 1984 that it was costing Los Angeles County $173 million per year to support illegals. And police in LA County at the time were saying that illegals take 34% more of their time than citizens and legal immigrants. In 1987, illegals accounted in San Diego County for 1/3 of the rapes and 1/4 of the murders in San Diego County. And they were talking too fast. They were giving statistics for LA County and whatnot, the amount of crimes that the illegals were responsible for there. 2 million illegals were counted in the 1987 census. So, and this was a big part of this documentary. They were talking about in the 70s. Okay. That was in 1987, excuse me. 2 million illegals were counted in 1987. And they went into a discussion, which I'll watch this video, going to be able to take notes because I didn't have paper last night. But they were talking about how in California and in several different states and in Arizona, we gain representation in Congress because of the 2 million illegals who were counted in the census. And then a case even went to the courts, and they were saying, they ruled in the courts, these people have a right to be counted. These people have a right to vote and to have a say in representation, especially in the state and local elections. And then they went on even further in the 1980s to talk about them being included in the federal elections, which is totally insane. I'm going to see if I can research this. They had a Bill of Rights for the undocumented worker. I'm going to see if yeah, and they were talking about undocumented immigrants have constitutional rights to, I don't think that I can find that particular. So I'm going to go ahead and share this because this is why I think it's very interesting and important to look at this sort of thing and understand how we got where we're at. So, and this was done in 2017. It was a Libertarian Institute, and I just pulled it up. I haven't read through it yet, but immigration restrictionists sometimes claim that non-citizens have no right under the Constitution, and that the U.S. government is therefore free to deal with them in whatever way it wants. At least as a general rule, this claim is simply false. Non-citizens undeniably have a wide range of rights under the Constitution. Indeed, within the borders of the United States, they have most of the same rights as citizens do, and long-standing Supreme Court precedent bans most state laws discriminating against non-citizens. And there is very little, if any, serious controversy among experts over this matter. The more controversial issue is whether the Constitution provides any protection for non-citizens outside U.S. borders, particularly in regards to immigration issues. Well, the Constitution reserves a few rights for citizens alone, and most notably is the Privileges and Immunities Clause of Article 4, Section 2, and the Privileges of Immunity Clause of the 14th Amendment. Both protect the privileges and immunities of U.S. citizens against various types of interference by state governments. The Second and Ninth Amendment indicate the rights they protect are those of the people. While the Supreme Court has never addressed this issue, lower courts have disagreed over whether the people entitled to the Second Amendment right to bear and keep arms includes non-citizens, especially undocumented immigrants. That a few constitutional rights may be specifically reserved to citizens underscores a broader principle that the vast majority are not, and there would be no need to specify such a reservation if the Constitution had a default rule limiting rights to citizens. So this is where you have judges and interpretation and the courts, by far the biggest exception to the court's generally favorable attitude towards extending constitutional rights to non-citizens is a so-called plenary power doctrine, which gives the federal government broad power to adopt the otherwise unconstitutional policies in its treatment of aliens when it comes to immigration policy. So, since the late 19th century, the doctrine has been understood as giving Congress very broad power to authorize the exclusion of aliens for almost any reason, including many rationales that would be forbidden in virtually any other context. The plenary power doctrine has no basis in the text or original meaning of the Constitution. With a few exceptions noted above, none of the rights protected by the Constitution are textually limited to non-citizens and not include a blanket exception for immigration cases. So see, you understand and you see how things can be misinterpreted, reinterpreted, wrongly interpreted. It just depends on the judge and the issue and the people fighting, having the argument for or against it. I don't know if this, I want to find this Bill of Rights. Maybe this is it. I think this is basically it. So it says, and this was done back in the 80s, folks, and the difference between an undocumented and illegal. The two terms are sometimes used to mean the same thing. An illegal immigrant alien is foreign-born individual who has entered the U.S. illegally, can be deported. It may also refer to a person entering the U.S. legally, but who has lost their legal status and can be deported. An undocumented immigrant is a foreign-born person who does not possess a valid visa or other immigration documentation because they entered the U.S. without inspection, stayed longer than their temporary visa permitted, or otherwise violated the terms under which they were committed. Through the courts and law, though the courts and laws use the term illegal and alien to describe foreign-born individuals in the U.S., they are criticized for being offensive and misleading. For one, illegal is an inaccurate way to describe a person who is undocumented. The person's status is illegal, but the person themselves is not. Further, alien has negative connotations, implying that a foreign-born person are different than anyone else and perhaps not even persons. Preferable alternatives to these terms include undocumented and foreign-born individuals or non-citizens. Let me see. I'm sorry, my dog is on steroids this morning with their squeaky toy. This isn't the Bill of Rights that they were reading. Anyway, I found it pretty interesting going all the way back to the 80s that this was going on. And you can go to the I think it's, I'm looking this video up to see, let's see, action projects. No, this would be under action. Countering. Stop mass migration. Let's see if it comes up here. If I can find this video, because I'll put this link to the video of this. There it is. It's called Out of Control. I'm going to go ahead and share this so that you can see this. It's called Mass Migration Tools at the Ready. It's under the Don Burt Society, jbs.org, and it's called Out of Control, the Immigration Invasion. And like I said, this was done in the 80s, and it's insane of how much this actually is in line with today. Let me see if I can just start a little bit of it. Oh, you know what? I probably can't show it because I've got it on here. Anyway, I just wanted to let you know that this is available, and it's just kind of, I always like to look into this sort of thing, and even if you go back into history and look at this sort of thing, because it makes you realize that this isn't a today issue. This has been a decades long, 40, 50 years is how long we've been dealing with this. And, you know, I was too young back in the 60s and 70s to really be paying attention to, you know, political things and what was going on at the border and that type of thing. But and then in the 80s, I was starting my family, and so you tend to evolve into somebody who cares about your country and evolves into paying attention to politics. I mean, I remember hearing, you know, news and big deals that were Bella, big issues that were on the news, and it would be on there for days, and dad and mom would have the TV on, and the news things like the Kennedy assassination. I remember that my dad was still in the Air Force, and we were stationed in Louisiana, and you know, the first time we landed on the moon and different things like that. But you don't start paying attention until you're older and until you have children and a family, and you realize that these are the types of things that are affecting your ability to raise a family and have a job and make the money and provide a place for your family to be raised, and to know that your children and grandchildren are going to be okay in the future. The country that you're leaving them, is it going to be the same type of country that you grew up in with the freedoms that you were afforded? And so that's why you start paying attention later in life. And so I have a granddaughter who's going to be 24 in August, and she's involved with Turning Point, and she's been involved with politics now for about 3-4 years. And I'm just so proud of her because she's paying attention at this young age. My other grandchildren, who are a little younger than my 24-year-old, they listen and they humor me, I think, but it's not something that they want to sit around and talk about on a daily basis. My granddaughter works at Turning Point. I can call her at any given time and talk about something political. She immediately knows what's up. We have a nice conversation. So it's refreshing that our young people are paying attention to this. And of course, young people today aren't having families as early as we used to back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. They're taking their time, and they're getting an education, and they're living life, and they're having life experiences before they become mom and dads. But and that's why I'm so impressed of why so many young people in that generation are paying attention and are becoming politically involved. And then you see some of these young people running for office. And a lot of people think they don't have life experience, they don't have this, they don't have that. Depends on what they've been doing with their life for the past 2 or 3 years before they step up and decide that they want to run for office. When they see the inconsistencies and when they see the lack of leadership because they're involved in their legislative districts or congressional districts, and they're helping with campaigns, and they see that people are struggling for good leadership in their communities. Maybe it's a city council, maybe it's a school board. I encourage these young people to run, but I don't encourage somebody who's green, who just comes out of nowhere and decides, you know what, I'm going to run for office because they want to make a name for themselves. You need to get the experience, you need to get the background so that you understand exactly what you're getting into and understand exactly what you're going in to fight for. So that being said, I want to just finish off about this video. There was an Immigration and Enforcement / Amnesty Act in the 1980s. April of 1976, there was a Break Down the Border conference in El Paso, which I'm going to be looking up. And then, yeah, so what they were fighting for was sanctuary policies versus amnesty. For those who didn't qualify for amnesty, the amnesty program under Reagan, the IAF was a big organization back then that was fighting for illegal rights. Casa Oscar Romero was in Brownsville, Texas. It was a Catholic-run sanctuary. You had a Catholic bishop in LA County fighting for these illegals. So I was wondering if that Casa Oscar Romero in Brownsville, Texas, I was wondering if that was the start of the Catholic Charities. Yeah, so anyway, it was just an interesting, it was an interesting video to watch, and knowing that this isn't a today issue, this has been a forever issue with the United States, and how things have evolved and how things have devolved and how things have disintegrated and how things have become so diluted and misinterpreted. And, you know, when you've got a country and you've got the founding fathers of the country who have written a constitution and a Bill of Rights, it's for we the people, the citizens. And we the people, in my opinion, is the same as saying the citizens of the United States. We the citizens of the United States. This is how they interpret when you go into some of these constitutional rights or the Bill of Rights, and if it says we the people or refers to the people, then it's going to be interpreted that means anybody who walks across our border are people, and so they're granted these constitutional rights, which I think is absolutely wrong. This would not happen for you or I if we went into any other foreign country. We would not be granted the same rights as their citizens have. And so this is why America has become the problem, has the problem that it does with illegal immigration, because you've got insane politicians who want to fight longer and harder for illegal aliens than they do for their American constituents, fellow American citizens who voted them into office to represent them. And you've got insane judges who aren't just on the bench and upholding the law. They're misinterpreting the laws and making up new laws and making up new rules and rulings. And that's affecting us as a country as a whole. You may not think that some case that's being heard in court down in your city courthouse is going to make any difference to you today. But how do you know it's not? How do you know that judge isn't going to misinterpret something and allow something to happen that should not be happening in your community? How do you know they're going to misinterpret this crime that this illegal alien committed and not let them be charged properly with the felony, something that would cause jail time? How do we know that we don't have judges in your cities and communities right now making decisions that they're going to release illegal criminals out onto your street who've committed rape or have murdered somebody? Like the illegal alien who murdered Laken Riley, released back out onto the streets because we don't have room in detention anymore. So instead of letting somebody go who hasn't committed a crime, an illegal who's come across the border and says, you know, they haven't committed a crime, they barely came, get rid of that person and release them into our country. I'd rather have them released than Laken Riley's murderer. We know what he's capable of. We know what he's already done. He's proven himself. He's proven his character. Why are we entertaining an argument when it comes to illegal alien criminals who murder, who rape, who assault, who steal, who break into these stores and steal, why are we entertaining the rights of these illegals who've come over the border and now have become agitators on our university campuses? These Middle Eastern terrorists who've come over, these pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian agitators who have arrived over our border and who have whirled up the masses and are causing this kind of chaos in our country. Why are we giving them a pass? They're interrupting the lives of Americans, not only at the school that these people pay, tens of thousands of dollars to attend every year, but they are also disrupting Americans' lives by laying on bridges, shutting down roads. And in a lot of cases, the city officials don't go out there and just drag those people out of the street and cuff them and throw them into jail. I loved it because I watched a video down in Florida where the cops went and drug every person off the street who was blocking a street, cuffed them and took them in and charged them with a crime, because Ron DeSantis signed a bill into place that you can't do that sort of thing in Florida. And so many other states and elected state officials and elected city officials and the police department, because they are told what to do and how to act and what they can and can't do by a city council or a mayor. They're too afraid to go out and do the sort of thing that is what they were hired to do. Law enforcement agents, you're not allowed to lay in the road and block roads and block traffic and cause the chaos that you do because you want your voice to be heard. What did blocking the road do? What did it do for the cause? Nothing. It just got you a 5-minute clip on the news in the evening. And that's what most of these people are all about. They have their buddies videotaping them and they put this stuff out on social media. Of course, the local news stations run down there because, this is the kind of stuff they like to show on the news. They don't like to show the kind of crimes that these illegals commit in our country, the heinous crimes they're committing against illegal or against American citizens. No, local media doesn't want to do that. But they will rush down to these stupid protests, even if it's 5 people. The local media will run down there and make a big deal about it and do the shots just accordingly so that it looks like it's a bigger deal than what it is. This is a misinformation campaign that's been going on for decades. And it's not the misinformation campaign, that they try and act like we're doing when we're bringing the truth about illegal immigration, when we're bringing the truth about illegal crime, all of that kind of stuff. That is the truth. And yet they want to label it that we're conspiracy theorists, that we're misinformation. And of course, the Zuckerberg, Facebook, Instagram, they're all intent on Twitter back in the day, all intent on making sure this misinformation wasn't getting out there. Folks, it's a sad day when the truth can be mislabeled as misinformation, and it leaves people scratching their head and leaves keep people so confused. What is the truth and what isn't? And all I can say to you, if you're listening to this and you've run into this sort of thing where maybe somebody you trusted posted something and, maybe it was just a fluke that they posted something and you're like, what the heck? And you can't even trust search engines, right? You have to get a internet search engine that you trust, that isn't going to be biased, and research the topic. Dig a little deeper. DuckDuckGo is a good search engine that you can go in, that it's not going to have the algorithms that Google does and direct you to the articles that they want you to read when you type in something. I look at what's happening on the Columbian University campus and I'm thinking, for these people to erect these tents, and I didn't know it was so bad, the garbage and the human feces, and they're just using the lawns and stuff as toilets. And I didn't know it was that bad, but the fact that they've shut down the school and made everything remote for the end of the semester, And we're even locking or blocking the entry cards of Jewish professors to get on campus, and kowtowing and catering to these activists slash terrorists is unbelievable to me to watch this go on, honestly. And they're so quick. The liberals are so quick to attack somebody who they deem dangerous to their agenda. They're going to attack them immediately. But what they are doing, and this is a huge point in my life, because in 2020, when I flew to DC and I taped my speech, illegal immigration speech, to be aired at the 2020 RNC, the day that it was supposed to be aired, I was going through my Twitter. I had just read this book about the Federal Reserve, and it was talking about the Rothschilds and the Federal Reserve, and I'm scrolling through it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy that this would come up when I finished reading this book not long ago. And anyway, I retweeted it because the Federal Reserve is a bad deal, folks, for this country. But anyway, later that day, I get a call from the White House that, you need to get on Twitter and apologize. And anyway, there's an article written, Anti-Semitic Angel Mom speaking at the RNC tonight. And it was because I'm anti-Semitic because I retweeted something about the Federal Reserve and the Rothschilds, not knowing at the end of this 60-long thread that it went into what they call the Jewish conspiracy theory. And I didn't read that far into it. So, but I was reading about, Federal Reserve, the Rothschilds, and my opinion of the Rothschilds and what they did. And you'll just have to look up the history of the Rothschilds, but what they did to Africa and what they've done throughout history. My disdain for the Rothschilds has to do with their character, and has to do with the things that they've done to people, to countries, and forming the Federal Reserve, being a part of all of that. That is where my disdain is. I could care less what religion they are. I could care less. But so, now I have this huge label on me, and of course it just went like wildfire. This is all they were talking about on the news, was this anti-Semitic angel mom. And then we fast forward to 2022, and I've got my Democrat political opponents here in LD9 bringing up the anti-Semitic. She's anti-Semitic. Well, the joke's on them, folks. It's interesting because our two state House representatives here in LD9 in Arizona, one is a Jewish man, so he's pro-Israel, and the other, Lorena Austin, is pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas. And she's actually, as a legislator, she has signed a letter with other Democratic legislators from Arizona to Biden demanding a ceasefire. So lo and behold, this Lorena Austin, who had such glee in commenting about me being anti-Semitic because I retweeted something, is actually the anti-Semitic in this situation. She's a legislator who has signed a letter proving this of herself. Now, when you go back to 2020 and the article that was written about me, it was interesting because I had a Jewish rabbi do an hour-long video explaining why I'm not anti-Semitic. And he went back through all of my social media. And he said, you don't become anti-Semitic overnight. This woman is the farthest thing from anti-Semitic. I had pro-Israel thing back in my social media for years, for decades. And so it's interesting how things like this play out. And I guarantee you, everybody probably who sent me the most vile, nasty, disgusting text messages, emails, social media direct messages when I was canceled from the RNC, I guarantee you every one of those people who took the time to write those disgusting things to me are anti-Semitic themselves, for sure. So it gives me hope that, once this information comes out in this election cycle, that the people in LD9 here in Arizona will understand we don't have the correct representation for the majority of how the people here in LD9 think. When I was door knocking and getting signatures and listening to people, the two Democratic state House representatives that we have do not align with the way the majority of the people that I spoke to at their doors. Now, mind you, I was knocking on Republican doors and some independent doors, and I'm going to be concentrating on knocking on independent and some weak Democratic doors and having conversations with them, because the other issue that Lorena Austin runs on is the LGBTQ. She's the first non-binary female Latino representative in the United States. And Miss Austin takes any chance that she gets in committee hearings to talk about how tough life has been for her. A revenge tour against all the people who made life miserable for her. And this is not the representation that we need in LD9. So these are the types of things that surprise me that are going on in districts, and in how these Democratic activists get voted into office when they don't even represent the majority of the voters in their district. And then we go back to, so many voters are disenfranchised. I get it. And my big wake-up call, folks, was understanding that when you go down to your state house and there's committee meetings going on, and you go down there to make your voice heard, or you get online and type in your comments, and they read some of them during the committee meetings from the people who aren't able to go down there. This is your chance, folks. They're having a committee hearing on this. You need to make your voice heard. But in reality, they've already worked behind the scenes before this committee hearing to make sure that they have enough votes to pass this issue. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in a committee hearing. So it really doesn't matter what's said. There's very few cases and times when these elected officials who are in these committee hearings listening to their constituents bring up concerns, whether it's pro or against the bill that they're having this committee hearing on. There's very few times that those committee hearings are going to change their mind, because their minds have already been made up. This happens at a city council level. The city of Mesa has a 2050 plan, and they're trying to implement the 15-minute city plan. But of course, it's word salad, folks. City of Mesa is using the word cul-de-sac. The cul-de-sac. So there's a piece of land at University of Mesa Drive on the southwest corner that they bought up a bunch of land, ripped down all these older homes and whatnot. And this is where the cul-de-sac is going to go in. You're not going to be able to drive your car in this area. It's going to be high-rise apartment complex. It's going to be stores. It's going to be, the light rail's right up the street. So you're either going to have to ride your bike over to the light rail to get to work, or walk to the light rail. And so they have these community meetings. And I decided to go to one of them at Mountain View High School here in Mesa. And as I'm looking online and looking into the City of Mesa calendar and stuff, I realized that the day before the meeting that I was going to go to, the committee that put together this 2050 plan was sending it over to the Mesa City Council for their approval to go ahead and vote and implement this. So why are you having a community meeting? There's two of them still to be had. I arrive at the high school, go into the cafeteria, big, beautiful display set up of everything. And I'm walking around and looking at it all. And, there are these huge sports complexes, parks and this and that. And what's funny is the city worked in conjunction with this company for this one big corner, ripped down some of this elementary school, ripped down part of a junior high school, which were these old red brick buildings. They were beautiful. and they were going to put in this huge soccer field complex, big recreational area. And of course, that went belly up. But by all means, City of Mesa, let's spend millions of dollars on a huge recreational facility out at Greenfield and McKellips, because obviously that's what's needed in Mesa, right? That's why that other one went belly up. But my point being, they had all these displays up of, here's what we're going to do with your millions of taxpayer money, Mesa residents. And I said, I want to talk to somebody about the 15-minute city plan. And they're like, oh, that's a downtown development. They're not here. Why aren't they here? Well, they're not at this meeting. We're just here to show you everything. So basically, it's a show and tell. There's no community interaction. And of course, when you walk in the door, the first thing they ask you is, did you get online and fill out the survey? Yes. Oh, good. Perfect. Okay. So you filled out the survey with your opinion, which of course we'll never know the outcome of that survey and what everybody's opinion was, right? And then you show up at a show and tell that we have, but your opinion doesn't matter here because you should have gone online and signed the survey, taken the survey, so we'd know what your opinion was. We're not going to argue. We're not having any discussion of why, when, and how. This is just, well, this is what we're doing, and this is what it will provide for the community. So my point being, this is why people are frustrated and don't want to vote. And this is why these cities and counties and states and the federal government have taken glee over the fact that the people don't want to vote, because you've given us less pushback from the people. And even though they may not listen to you at these council meetings, at the state capitol, at the Senate and the Congress there in Congress in DC, I've been there many times and testified. It doesn't matter what I'm saying. It's a waste of my time because these people already have their mind made up. We need to get the right representation voted in who understands that your opinion matters. I am we the people, just like you are we the people. And I'm never going to lose sight of that when I'm down at the Capitol. I'm part of you. I just want to go down there and represent your voice and try and be a voice of reason and try and get these middle of the line Democrats to understand we need things like voter integrity, election integrity. We need things like state powers to secure the border here in Arizona. We need a lot of things to go on here in Arizona on a state level, that the goal is just to keep the vote on party lines and just keep this in utter chaos, and nothing is ever solved, folks. And I honestly believe there's other reasons too, nefarious reasons, why some of these representatives in Congress have just, upped and left before their term's over. But I think a lot of people are just really frustrated with the lack of projection, with the lack of movement in Congress. We've been in a stalemate now. It's going on 8 years because all through the Trump administration, nothing happened. You had Paul Ryan as Speaker of the House the first 2 years, who was a big fat nothing, got absolutely nothing done. And then you had all these organizations filing all these lawsuits against the Trump administration, which was handcuffing them and taking all of the attention off of what needed to be done in Congress, and just concentrating on oh my gosh, they're doing this, they're doing that, they're suing in this, or they're suing, this one, that one, the other one. So I understand why people are frustrated. But you have to have conversations with your friend and family that, as frustrated as you are, it's going to get worse if we don't right things in the election in 2024. With that, I'm going to go, and I will be back tomorrow morning. And I thank you for joining me today. And if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments, and I'll try and answer them on tomorrow's show. Have a good evening.